Hello, welcome to News Center. I'm Parikshit Luthra. Today we look at the progress of the government's PLI scheme so far. Data released by the government in September shows that investment and employment across most sectors is nowhere close to expectation. A report by rating agency ICRA says that capex deployment from the PLI scheme is expected to surge from FY24 for more than 80% of the projected investments. The report says bulk of the PLI capex that companies have to put in will be concentrated between FY24 and FY26 as most of the major sectors start manufacturing activities from FY24. To discuss this more, I'm now joined by Rohit Ahuja, Head of Research and Outreach at ICRA. Rohit, thank you very much for joining us. Let me begin by asking you, we have been seeing the PLI scheme encouraging investment, encouraging production in a few sectors, such as mobile phones, pharmaceuticals right now, maybe 3 to 4 sectors, but the investments have not really taken off as a result of other PLI schemes for other sectors. Why is that?
Hi, Parikshit. So I think one of the key factors here is that these schemes were announced a year back, and the bidding were going on as late as middle of this year. So when a bid is awarded and there is a lag of about 6 months to a year before on the ground capex picks up. Plus, we need to understand we are in the middle of massive supply chain disruptions, geopolitical uncertainties. So entrepreneurs and investors need to ensure that the project is profitable and takes off well in time, because most of the PLI scheme benefits are accruable only once the production starts. So it's in the incentive for the winning bidders to start the capex as early as possible and to get it right so that they can start getting the benefits. So we've heard about
Right.
semiconductor PLI scheme. The land allocation happened recently, and now it is expected to pick up only in FY24. Similarly, ACC batteries, we saw the most of the bidders being announced about 2 months back, and as with any project, it takes about a few months before it kicks off. So that's the reason if you do the math,
Right.
we can clearly see that FY24 is the inflection point when the capex actually starts showing, purely because the bids were just announced recently and the land allocation and all the processes just started.
Okay. Rohit, also to ask you, ICRA is saying that capex deployment is expected to surge from FY24. Which are some of the sectors where we will see a surge in production, a surge in capital investment? And the reason why I'm asking you is because there has been concern in some government quarters about capital investment not really taking off to the level it should.
Yeah, so obviously the largest schemes being semiconductor and ACC batteries, and we've heard a lot of media coverage on who got awarded the schemes. We should see those lead the capex first in FY24. Then you have various other PLI scheme winners, where medical devices, textiles, solar PV modules, where already the capex is happening, but it will show on the ground primarily once large project starts contributing. So we already know semiconductor is the one which will have the biggest component of capex over the next 3 years, and that's where the big jump in capex should come in from next year.
Right. Also to ask you, what are some of the tweaks possibly that we need to the PLI schemes in order to boost manufacturing further, in order to make our exports more competitive?
I think currently the incentives that have been awarded in many of the schemes is very much attractive. What we have mentioned in our report is, there could be certain uncertainties in terms of supply chain, procurement of raw material for the plant and machinery. That's where I think the government needs to be dynamic. Currently, very difficult to envisage any specific tweak, but I think looking at the scenario, how things shape up over the next 3 to 4 months, probably the government may need to add a few more incentives, and it all depends on how the geopolitical environment is and how the global supply chain environment is, and it all a factor of the macro developments across the world. But as of now,
Right.
we don't see
Rohit, we
any
have been
major
hearing that,
tweaks.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, you don't see any major tweaks. We've also been hearing that the government is considering at least 8 or 9 more sectors for PLI schemes. This includes vaccine, raw materials as well. Which are some of the sectors which could benefit from the PLI schemes which are in the pipeline?
So one of the large schemes that we are expecting is on electrolyzers for green hydrogen. I think that's been an ask for the industry because we've seen a big investments being envisaged in that space. Electrolyzers is a very critical component for manufacturing green hydrogen, and that's one of the last schemes that we expect to come in. Another one being power transmission equipment. As we all know, the renewables PLI has taken off significantly, but there is a massive investment required in power transmission. And many of the components that go into power transmission equipment, we are seeing a lot of imports there. So given the structure of the PLI scheme is to replace imports and make India more self-sufficient, I think this is one of the other sectors where we could see the scheme could be announced. Vaccine materials, definitely, we've seen the need for it over the last 2 to 3 years. But the urgency with regards to vaccines currently is kind of fading, given that the concerns on COVID has kind of mellowed down quite a bit. So that may not come off
Right.
immediately. Another one in the China plus one strategy, chemicals fit into that space. So we've heard some news on certain schemes in chemicals, especially the ones which are getting imported. The government could come up with a scheme on that.
Right. You have said in your report that the government PLI schemes to date have had encouraging bids across sectors. However, deployment of capex is expected to pick up only in FY24 for more than 80% of the projected investments. Now, in terms of how these investments will lead to job creation, any kind of estimates on the number of jobs that could be created across these sectors starting FY24 onwards?
Difficult to predict right now. See, overall, we expected more than 3 million jobs from the entire scheme. Now it's all a function of which sector picks up in a big way. But the scheme is a more long-term scheme. As we mentioned in the report, bulk of the capex starts deploying from next year. So we expect overall job creation of up to 3 to 4 million. And indirectly, there could be far more bigger job creation as other ancillary sectors and the supply chain come into play. But it is going to see a major effect. You will come to know only in next 1 to 2 years what sort of impact on the ground we have.
All right. So FY24 is when the real test of the PLI schemes and their performance on the ground will be seen by everyone. Thank you very much, Rohit, for joining us and giving us your analysis of the PLI schemes, their progress so far, and why most of the investments will really take off FY24 onwards. In other news, the Supreme Court has sought clarity from the union government's top lawyer over the appointment of Arun Goel as election commissioner. A 5-judge bench is hearing a petition seeking reforms to the current system of appointing election commissioners. During the hearing yesterday, the Apex Court observed that Chief Election Commissioner should be someone who does not allow himself to be bulldozed, and went on to say that former chiefs of the poll body, like the late T.N. Seshan, happen once in a while. Ashmit Kumar is here with more details. Ashmit, take us through the action in court today as far as the appointment of the election commissioner is concerned.
Well, to first address the issue that is at hand, that is being considered by a 5-judge bench, a constitution bench of the Apex Court, the issue that is being considered is how to ensure that the election commission is more independent. The suggestions that have come by way of the petitions is that there should be a collegium for appointing the election commissioners as well as the chief election commissioner, and that the political parties, either by way of constitutional positions like the Prime Minister or the Leader of Opposition, should not be a part of the appointment panel. That's the argument being made for an independent collegium. Now, in the process of hearing these arguments, the arguments have been going on for about 3 to 4 days now. The concern that emerged today is the appointment of Arun Goel as the election commissioner. Keep in mind, he took charge on November 21st, And that is something that, in fact, inspired a few comments from the bench. The bench, in fact, observed that at a time when a five-judge constitution bench of the Apex Court is deliberating on the matter, is adjudicating on the very issue of appointments, was it appropriate for the panel, for the appointment to have gone ahead? Could it have been avoided? Could it have been delayed? These are the questions that have been put across to the Attorney General, and these questions weren't merely observations. There is a very clear direction that now falls from the Apex Court to the Attorney General to lay before the Supreme Court the papers for appointment so that the Apex Court can, in fact, look at this appointment process and verify whether everything is kosher. So, strong exception being taken here by the Apex Court. The hearing, we understand, will resume in the top court tomorrow.
All right. Thank you very much, Ashmit Kumar, for joining us with all the news from the Supreme Court. Moving on to sports now. Rapid developments at what is arguably the most popular football club in the world. Manchester United have announced the departure of Cristiano Ronaldo after he criticized the club, its owners and the manager. Soon after, it was also announced that the Glazer family is open to selling the club, sparking a rally in the share price and euphoria among fans. Arundhati Ramnan reports on the Glazer family's decision to sell the club and their fraught relationship with the Manchester United faithful.
Even the swimming pool that the players use, the saunas, all these facilities, nothing had changed since you'd left in 2009.
Nothing changed. Surprisingly, not only the pool, the jacuzzi, even the gym. Even some points, the technology, the kitchen, the chefs, which is I appreciate, lovely persons. They stop in a time which it surprised me a lot. I thought I will see different things,
In a no-holds-barred interview with British journalist Piers Morgan, Cristiano Ronaldo slammed Manchester United and its owners for not investing in the club. The fans were not surprised when the club and Ronaldo decided to part ways after the interview, but what shocked everyone was the announcement that the Glazer family are also ready to take the exit. A statement signed by Avram and Joel Glazer said, and I quote, "As we seek to continue building in the club's history of success, the board has authorized a thorough evaluation of strategic alternatives, including new investment into the club, a sale or other transactions involving the company." The Glazer family have been the owners of Manchester United for the last 17 years, but their reign has been tumultuous to say the least. The team has not won the league for nearly a decade, and fans have taken to the streets to voice their discontent. Manchester United shares in the US rallied 15% after the announcement, adding $400 million to market capitalization in a single day. The Glazers bought the club in 2005 for just over $1 billion. Forbes values Manchester United at over $4.5 billion, and recently Chelsea was sold for over $4 billion. So the Glazers will be expecting a steeper valuation for Manchester United, considering its history and fan base. According to its latest financial statement, Manchester United has a debt of more than $500 million. It suffered losses due to COVID, but all of this did not stop the Glazer family from taking a dividend of nearly $35 million, sparking more anger from the fans. The departure of Cristiano Ronaldo with mutual consent has split the fan base. One Manchester United legend saw it coming.
Sad to see a player like Cristiano Ronaldo, as I've said many times, one of the best players of all time, and to see it end this way with Manchester United is obviously as a former teammate and a fan of Manchester United, it's sad to see it end this way. But I think once everyone's seen the interview he done with Piers Morgan and how he attacked the club, I think there was no option. There was no option for this to happen. So am I surprised? No.
So Ronaldo is gone, and the Glazer family could be leaving. Winds of change are blowing through Old Trafford. In Mumbai, Arundhati Ramanan.
And not just that, you can catch all the FIFA World Cup action right here on News Centre and CNBC-TV18 in the days to come. We're going to take a short break, but don't go anywhere. CNBC-TV18 learns the Finance Ministry is looking at ways of simplifying capital gains tax provisions. Details when we're back. Welcome back. CNBC-TV18 learns the Finance Ministry is looking at ways of simplifying capital gains tax provisions. Timsi Jaipuria now joins us. Timsi, what are you picking up? There have been at least 2 or 3 rounds of industry consultations, and there has been a recommendation on capital gains tax too. What is the government saying?
Well, that's right. What we are given to understand from sources is that the Revenue Department is currently studying provisions of capital gains tax structure. The department is in favor of further simplification of capital gains tax provisions, and once approved, these provisions, the new provisions, could be part of the budget announcement. The view prevailing at the Revenue Department is that there needs to be simplification of this particular law. There could be simplification just in terms to provide ease of compliance and cleaning up of the complex law, and to remove disparity between several financial instruments which fall under similar categories. The proposal which is under consideration is that to have 3 broad categories of assets, that is equity, non-equity financial, and the third being non-financial. Also, the proposal is to continue a special treatment for equity assets, whereas to remove disparity of rates and holding period for both short-term and long-term for non-equity financial assets. When it comes to non-financial assets, the proposal is to revise indexation base to a newer base year, which since the earlier base year is 2001 and it is quite outdated. So to moving it to a more recent year could be something which could be on the anvil. Let's see what is the final proposal and whether the department is convinced to go ahead with these changes or not.
All right, thanks, Timsi, for joining us. Let's shift focus to the auto sector now. Electric scooter maker Ather Energy has launched a new factory to boost production capacity from 1.2 lakh to 4.2 lakh vehicles per annum. The company says electric two-wheeler penetration will reach 25% by the end of FY23, and the company is working towards a zero-subsidy scenario starting 2024. Danish Anand visited the company's new factory in Hosur and got us this special report.
Hero Motor-backed Ather Energy today has inaugurated its second manufacturing facility in the Hosur district of Tamil Nadu, and we are currently present right there. And as you can see behind me, it's a very huge facility. And after this inauguration, the overall production capacity of Ather Energy has risen from 1.20 lakh scooters per annum to 4,20,000 scooters per annum. And this facility will cater to initially 2 different kinds of scooters, that is the Ather 450X and the Ather 450 Plus. What is the overall manufacturing capability that you will have after the new inauguration? And talking about this particular facility, how many more scooters can this produce and what is the expandable numbers?
So our first factory, that capacity was about 1,20,000 units annually. With the introduction of this one, from a vehicle perspective, that number goes up to 4,20,000. So from 1,20,000 to 4,20,000, that's the vehicle capacity. The battery capacity is slightly higher because we also have to cater to aftermarket and spares and all that. So that capacity was 4,30,000.
So talking about the current sales, what is the outlook for the rest of the financial year? And talk about FY24, how much jump in sales are you expecting?
So the market is going really fast. I think the market is growing faster than any one of us anticipated. We've been in business for many years. This is a primary business. It's the only business we have. We have every reason to be optimistic. And even we were taken aback by the growth that we are seeing right now. So if I look at the last month's numbers, the e-scooter penetration is about, I think, 16-17%. So we already have a situation where about 16-17% people are buying e-scooters. I expect that number to go to about 20-25% by end of this financial year. And if you hit that number, then we're looking at 1 in 4 people buying scooters, buying electric scooters. That pace of growth after that is just a hockey stick after that, right? So we see this growing really dramatically over the next few months.
So we're talking about the whole government scenario right now. We have seen that the government is supposed to come out with certain guidelines for battery as well as for EV manufacturing. So how poised are you as far as your company is concerned? How ready are you? And do you really think that it will be an easy transition for Ather?
See, we've been in conversation with the government for the longest time, in a consultative capacity to collaborate with them to help arrive at these guidelines, right? Obviously, the government spoke to a variety of people, a variety of stakeholders. So what is coming now actually is no surprise, right? It's something that we've been actually actively pushing for because we believe battery safety, vehicle safety is a very active choice the OEM needs to make very early on in life, right? So it's not something you take lightly. And even though these are more stringent requirements than have them in the past, we are sort of much beyond them. Like if I give you a reference point, like today, we need about, to comply with about 9 guidelines to be compliant from a battery perspective. Against that 9, we have 200 tests, right? So that's the difference we're looking at. Our belief is that while regulation needs to go up, but as a responsible OEM, you have to be ahead of regulation, not just comply. And we are fully there in terms of our readiness for the change.
So now talking about the whole EV industry as a whole, we are seeing that the EV industry, especially the two-wheeler industry, is kind of plagued by the recent disbursal of FAME scheme is concerned. So talking about that, are you getting the disbursement from the government? And once this disbursement stops, do you think that the real EV demand will generate in India?
So yes, we are getting, because we are compliant with the FAME requirements, FAME 2 requirements, so we are getting our disbursement, so there is no problem there, right? From a point of view of long term, when FAME 2 and other subsidies sort of go away, see, the industry factors that scenario in our long term planning, right? When we look at our long term plan, we don't assume subsidy is going to be there forever, right? We believe the subsidy, right now the time frame for FAME 2 is March 2024. Whether it gets taken off completely immediately or taper off, honestly we don't know. We hope it tapers off gradually, but we don't expect it to last forever, which means our business plans need to be based on a foundation that does not assume subsidy. And that's what we do. So our cost structures, our growth plans are all based on zero subsidy expectation in the medium term.
Right. Sir, what are your future plans? We are seeing that the many new companies that are getting into electric motorcycles. So do you plan to launch an electric motorcycle? And talking about like a really futuristic perspective, will we ever see Ather Energy getting into electric four-wheelers?
Long term, who's seen, but I can just tell you about the foreseeable future that we know that we are sort of embarking upon. The next couple of years, 2 years, 2.5 years, I think we'll invest all our energies in consolidating the scooter market. That's where we have the lead. That's where we have the expertise, the strength, and also a strong position already, right? So we're going to consolidate that. In a 3 to 5 year time horizon, we expect to launch a motorbike as well, for sure. Right now, it's early days. We are planning. We have some early ideas on which segment, which price point. Too early to talk about specifics, but definitely we have that on the roadmap.
So very lastly, we are seeing the entire EV market is getting a lot of crowded. And talking about Hero Moto, it's one of your investors, and they have recently tied up with Gogoro as well. And Gogoro is also expected to come out as a standalone brand in the country. So do you see a synergy, or do you see this as a challenge? And will we ever see a co-branded scooter or a cross-badging kind of an arrangement between Ather and Gogoro?
See, Hero MotoCorp has been an investor since 2015, right? So it's not like a new phenomenon. And since the very beginning, both us and Hero MotoCorp have been very clear that we are independent businesses, right? So we do not collaborate. Like we don't have technology transfer, we don't technology sharing, we don't share supply chain. Like if the common supplier, it's a coincidence more than a strategy. We have different distribution, different brand, different marketing. Essentially, they are different companies, right? We converge at a board level because they are a large and very valued investor. They are obviously there on the board. But we work independently. For us, Gogoro will come in as competition like any other competition. So, yeah.
I'm surrounded by at least 2,000 ready to be dispatched Ather 450 Plus and 450X scooters, which are ready to be shipped across dealerships around the country. But the buck doesn't stop here, as Ather has very big plans and has big ambitions for the future, because this initial facility will cater to just 2 kinds of scooters. But as the company grows and as new scooter models are introduced by Ather, all of them will be manufactured here. And it is very likely that whenever the company gets into the electric motorcycle segment, that will also be manufactured here. With video journalist Hruday Patra, this is Danish Anand for CNBC-TV18.
All right, thanks very much, Danish, for getting us that ground report from Hosur. So Ather definitely planning big for the electric vehicle segment, also a motorcycle in the pipeline. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of News Center. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.